Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact, rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. The show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable, suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time, with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, Later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog. Have you ever wondered if Stewie Griffin is actually a psychopath or just a misunderstood genius? What if I told you that the creators of Family Guy have hidden some of the most disturbing and fascinating secrets about this baby that would completely change how you see the show forever? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the darkest corners of animated television. Today, we're uncovering the shocking lore behind one of animation's most controversial characters. From hidden meanings in his accent to disturbing implications about his sexuality and time travel adventures, we're about to explore Family Guy's secrets that even die-hard fans have missed. But before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you think, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's start with something that will blow your mind right away. Stewie's British accent isn't just a random character quirk. According to the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, there's a deeply psychological reason behind it. The accent represents Stewie's desperate attempt to distance himself from his family and create a superior identity. It's actually a defense mechanism rooted in childhood trauma and feelings of abandonment. Think about it. Stewie is surrounded by what he perceives as intellectual inferiors. His father Peter is portrayed as bumbling and crude, his mother Lois often dismisses him, and his siblings fail to engage with his advanced intellect. The British accent becomes his way of elevating himself above what he sees as American mediocrity. It's not just pretentious, it's protective. But here's where it gets really interesting. Voice actor Seth MacFarlane has revealed in interviews that the accent was originally inspired by Rex Harrison's performance in My Fair Lady, specifically the character of Henry Higgins. Harrison's character was known for being intellectually arrogant and emotionally distant from others. Sound familiar? This connection runs deeper than you might think. Henry Higgins was a character who viewed himself as superior to everyone around him, particularly women, and had difficulty forming genuine emotional connections. These are exact parallels to Stewie's character development throughout the series. The accent isn't just mimicry, it's psychological modeling. Moving into even more disturbing territory, let's talk about Stewie's relationship with violence and murder. In early seasons, Stewie's homicidal tendencies weren't played entirely for laughs. The writers included subtle hints that his violent thoughts stem from genuine psychological disturbance rather than typical childhood acting out. Consider his detailed knowledge of weapons, torture techniques, and murder methods. This isn't information a normal one-year-old would possess, even in an animated universe. The show's writers have suggested that Stewie's intelligence comes with a dark side, an inability to process normal, emotional responses to conflict. There's a particularly chilling episode where Stewie creates a simulation of killing Lois, and his satisfaction with the violence goes beyond typical cartoon comedy. The writers included psychological details that suggest Stewie experiences genuine pleasure from imagining harm to others. This crosses the line from innocent childhood fantasy into something much more concerning. What makes this even more unsettling is how other characters react to Stewie's violent statements. Most of the time, they can't understand him or they dismiss his comments as baby babbling. But the few characters who do understand him, like Brian, often seem genuinely disturbed by what Stewie says. This suggests that even within the show's universe, Stewie's thoughts are recognized as abnormal. Now let's dive into one of the most controversial aspects of Stewie's character development. His sexuality has been a source of debate and speculation since the show began. But there are hidden clues that reveal the writer's true intentions. Seth MacFarlane has made several statements over the years suggesting that Stewie is gay. But the way this has been handled in the show reveals some problematic undertones. Rather than presenting his sexuality as a natural part of his character development, it's often used as shock value or comedic relief. There's an uncomfortable pattern in how the show handles Stewie's potential relationships with male characters. His interactions with other boys his age, his fascination with certain male celebrities, and his reactions to romantic situations all contain coded language that adult viewers recognize but children watching wouldn't understand. The most disturbing aspect is how the show uses Stewie's age to make jokes about adult themes. Because he's technically a baby, the writers can include sexual innuendo and mature content that would be completely inappropriate if he were portrayed as his actual age emotionally and mentally. This creates a strange cognitive dissonance for viewers. We're supposed to accept Stewie as intellectually mature enough to understand complex concepts, build advanced technology, and engage in philosophical discussions. But then the show treats his sexuality as a punchline specifically because of his physical age. The time travel elements of Stewie's character open up another disturbing can of worms. Throughout the series, Stewie has demonstrated the ability to travel through time and alternate dimensions. But if you pay close attention to these episodes, there are implications that Stewie has been manipulating events in ways that benefit him psychologically. Consider the episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different time periods. Stewie shows remarkably little concern for the consequences of changing historical events. He's willing to potentially erase people from existence or alter major world events just to satisfy his curiosity or desires. This reveals a fundamental lack of empathy that goes beyond typical childhood selfishness. Stewie understands that his actions can cause suffering to others, but he simply doesn't care. He views other people, even those he claims to love, as expendable if they interfere with his goals. There's also the disturbing implication that Stewie may have used time travel to manipulate his own family relationships. Several episodes hint that he's been to the future and knows how certain events will play out. Yet he allows traumatic things to happen to his family members because it serves his purposes. The relationship between Stewie and Brian deserves special attention because it reveals some of the darkest aspects of Stewie's psychology. On the surface, their friendship appears to be the one genuine emotional connection Stewie has made. But when you examine their interactions closely, a more troubling pattern emerges. Stewie often treats Brian more like a pet than a friend, despite Brian's obvious intelligence and emotional needs. He manipulates Brian's insecurities about his writing career, his drinking problem, and his romantic failures. Stewie provides just enough support to keep Brian dependent on their relationship, but not enough to actually help Brian grow as a person. This is classic emotional manipulation. Stewie has identified Brian's weaknesses and uses them to maintain control over their relationship. He offers Brian intellectual stimulation and adventure that Brian can't find elsewhere, creating a situation where Brian becomes psychologically dependent on Stewie's attention. The most disturbing aspect is how Stewie reacts when Brian tries to form relationships with others. He becomes jealous and possessive, often sabotaging Brian's attempts at happiness with other characters. This isn't the behavior of a true friend. It's the behavior of someone who views others as possessions. Let's talk about something that will completely change how you view Stewie's character. The show's writers have included subtle hints that Stewie may not actually be as intelligent as he appears. Instead, much of his advanced knowledge and technological ability may be the result of accessing information from alternate dimensions or future timelines. Think about it logically. How does a 1-year-old acquire the knowledge necessary to build time machines, death rays, and mind control devices? Even accounting for the show's absurd universe, this level of technological sophistication requires decades of study and experience. The answer may be that Stewie isn't learning this information in the traditional sense. He's accessing it through his interdimensional travel abilities. This would explain why his knowledge seems to appear spontaneously, and why he sometimes knows things that haven't been invented yet in his timeline. If this theory is correct, it raises disturbing questions about Stewie's true nature. Is he actually a 1-year-old human, Or is he something else entirely? The show has hinted at supernatural elements in Stewie's character that go beyond simple genius-level intelligence. This would also explain why Stewie's personality seems to shift dramatically between episodes. Different versions of Stewie from alternate dimensions might be influencing or occasionally replacing the original. This isn't just speculation. There are episodes where multiple Stewies appear and they have distinctly different personalities and moral frameworks. The financial implications of Stewie's inventions reveal another dark secret about his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has created technology that would be worth billions of dollars in the real world. Time travel, teleportation, advanced robotics, genetic manipulation. These are technologies that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet Stewie never seems interested in using his inventions to improve the world, or even to improve his family's financial situation. The Griffins continue to live in a modest middle-class home despite having access to technology that could solve most of humanity's problems. This reveals something deeply selfish about Stewie's nature. He's not interested in helping others or making the world a better place. He creates advanced technology purely for his own amusement or to solve his personal problems. The potential benefits to humanity are irrelevant to him. Even more disturbing is what this says about his view of human suffering. Stewie has the ability to cure diseases, solve poverty, prevent wars, and eliminate countless sources of human misery. His choice not to do so suggests that he views human suffering as either unimportant or potentially entertaining. The show's handling of Stewie's relationship with his parents reveals some of the most psychologically complex aspects of his character. His hatred for Lois isn't just typical mother-son conflict blown out of proportion. There are hints that Stewie's hostility stems from a deep-seated fear of emotional vulnerability. Lois represents everything that threatens Stewie's carefully constructed identity. She's emotionally intuitive. She sees through his intellectual pretensions, and she offers the kind of unconditional love that Stewie finds terrifying. His plots to kill her aren't really about hatred. They're about eliminating what he perceives as a threat to his psychological defenses. Peter, on the other hand, represents everything Stewie fears becoming. Peter's intellectual limitations, emotional openness, and general contentment with life are the opposite of everything Stewie believes makes him superior. His contempt for Peter is actually a projection of his own insecurities about masculinity and emotional expression. The most tragic aspect of Stewie's character is that his intelligence isolates him from the very connections he desperately needs. He's created an identity based on intellectual superiority that prevents him from experiencing genuine emotional intimacy with others. This psychological isolation explains many of Stewie's more extreme behaviors. His violence, manipulation, and general disregard for others aren't signs of inherent evil. They're desperate attempts to feel some kind of connection or control in a world where his intelligence makes genuine relationships nearly impossible. The show's writers have included several episodes that hint at what Stewie might become as an adult, and the implications are truly disturbing. Future versions of Stewie are typically portrayed as either megalomaniacal world leaders or completely isolated hermits. Neither option suggests healthy psychological development. This raises uncomfortable questions about whether Stewie's character arc is actually a tragedy disguised as comedy. Are we watching a brilliant child slowly transform into a monster because his intelligence prevents him from developing normal emotional connections? The most chilling aspect is that Stewie seems aware of these potential futures, but appears unable or unwilling to change course. He's trapped by his own psychological defenses and his need to maintain his identity as intellectually superior to everyone around him. One of the most overlooked aspects of Stewie's character is his relationship with technology and how it reflects his view of human relationships. Stewie frequently builds robots, artificial intelligences, and other mechanical beings to serve his needs. But pay attention to how he treats these creations. Stewie programs his technological creations to be completely subservient to his will. They have no independent thoughts or desires that might conflict with his own. This reveals his ideal relationship dynamic. He wants connections with others, but only if they involve complete control on his part. When his creations do develop independence or challenge his authority, Stewie typically destroys them without hesitation. This pattern reveals how he would likely treat human relationships if he had the same level of control over people that he has over his inventions. The most disturbing example of this is how Stewie reacts when his creations show genuine emotions or desires for independence. Rather than being proud of creating truly intelligent life, he views their independence as a betrayal and responds with violence. This suggests that Stewie's inability to form healthy relationships isn't just due to his intelligence or psychological issues. He fundamentally doesn't understand or value the autonomy of others. He wants connection, but only on his terms and only if it doesn't challenge his sense of superiority. The show's exploration of Stewie's moral development, or lack thereof, reveals some of the most troubling aspects of his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has numerous opportunities to learn empathy, compassion, and genuine care for others. Yet he consistently fails to internalize these lessons in any meaningful way. What makes this particularly disturbing is that Stewie clearly understands moral concepts intellectually. He can discuss ethics, philosophy, and the difference between right and wrong with sophisticated language and apparent understanding. But this intellectual knowledge doesn't translate into emotional understanding or behavioral change. This disconnect between intellectual and emotional intelligence suggests that Stewie may be fundamentally incapable of genuine moral growth. He can understand why others value compassion and empathy, but he cannot experience these emotions himself in any authentic way. The implications of this for his future development are truly frightening. A person with Stewie's intelligence and technological abilities, but without genuine empathy or moral constraints, represents one of the most dangerous personality types imaginable. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Stewie Griffin's disturbing psychology, it's clear that this character represents far more than simple cartoon comedy. The writers of Family Guy have created a complex psychological portrait of a brilliant but fundamentally damaged individual whose intelligence has become both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weakness. Stewie's story serves as a dark commentary on the relationship between intelligence and emotional development. His character suggests that intellectual ability without emotional growth and genuine human connection can lead to the kind of isolated superiority complex that historically produces some of humanity's most dangerous individuals. The most unsettling aspect of Stewie's character is how his journey reflects real-world concerns about gifted children who don't receive proper emotional support and guidance. His psychological isolation, manipulative tendencies, and inability to form genuine relationships are all documented risks for highly intelligent individuals who don't develop healthy coping mechanisms. What makes Family Guy's portrayal particularly effective is how it disguises these serious psychological themes within absurd comedy. Viewers can laugh at Stewie's antics while unconsciously absorbing a much darker message about the potential consequences of emotional neglect and intellectual isolation. The show's writers have created a character who forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of intelligence, morality, and human connection. Stewie Griffin isn't just a funny cartoon baby. He's a warning about what happens when brilliance develops without wisdom, when intelligence grows without empathy, and when technological ability advances without moral development. If you found this exploration of Stewie's psychology as fascinating and disturbing as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden meanings behind your favorite animated characters. Leave a comment below with your thoughts about Stewie's character development and whether you think there's hope for his psychological growth. And if you're ready to have your mind blown again, check out our video about the dark secrets hidden in SpongeBob SquarePants that will completely change how you see that show forever. Trust me, once you see what we've uncovered, you'll never look at Bikini Bottom the same way again. Have you ever wondered why Meg Griffin is treated so terribly by her own family? What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Family Guy forever. I'm talking about hidden lore, deleted scenes, and creator secrets that explain everything about the most hated character on television. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Meg the same way again. But before we dive into these shocking revelations, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Peter literally abuse his daughter and just laughed it off? How many times have you seen Lois completely ignore Meg's cries for help? What if I told you there's a disturbing reason behind all of this, and it's way darker than you think? Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Meg Griffin wasn't always supposed to be the punching bag of the Griffin family. In the original concept art and early story treatments, Meg was designed to be the voice of reason, the straight man character who would call out the family's absurd behavior. She was meant to be relatable, intelligent, and the character viewers would connect with most. But something changed during production that transformed her into the most abused character in animated television history. The transformation of Meg Griffin began with a simple creative decision that snowballed into something much more sinister. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team discovered that having Meg be the target of jokes created an easy comedic formula. Need a quick laugh? Have someone insult Meg. Running short on time? Make Meg the butt of a cruel joke. What started as occasional comic relief became systematic psychological torture disguised as family entertainment. Here's where it gets really disturbing. The writers didn't just randomly choose Meg to be the family scapegoat. They specifically crafted her character to represent every teenage girl who feels invisible, unloved, and rejected by their family. Think about it. Meg's experiences mirror the real struggles of millions of teenagers who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The show takes these genuine feelings of adolescent pain and turns them into punchlines for adult entertainment. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Lacey Chabert, the original voice of Meg, left the show after just one season? The official reason given was scheduling conflicts, but industry insiders tell a different story. Chabert reportedly became uncomfortable with the increasingly cruel direction of Meg's character. She allegedly expressed concerns about the psychological implications of voicing a character who suffered such relentless abuse, even in a cartoon format. When Mila Kunis took over the role, she brought a different energy to Meg, but the character's treatment only got worse. The writers seemed to interpret Kunis's stronger vocal presence as permission to heap even more abuse on Meg. It's as if they felt they needed to work harder to break down this version of the character, leading to increasingly disturbing storylines and more brutal family dynamics. Let's talk about the episode that was so controversial it was partially rewritten before airing. In the original version of Barely Legal, Meg's obsession with Brian was portrayed much more sympathetically. The initial script showed Meg as a lonely teenager desperately seeking any form of affection, with Brian genuinely caring about her well-being. But the network demanded changes, wanting more comedic moments at Meg's expense. The final version transformed Meg's legitimate emotional needs into creepy stalker behavior, making her the villain of her own story. Here's something that will make your skin crawl. The show's writers have admitted in interviews that they use Meg as a testing ground for how far they can push controversial content. If a joke about domestic abuse, mental illness, or teenage depression doesn't work with other characters, they try it with Meg first. She's literally a guinea pig for the most disturbing content the show produces. The reasoning? If viewers are already conditioned to see Meg as deserving of mistreatment, they're less likely to object to increasingly dark humor. The psychological profile of Meg Griffin reveals something truly heartbreaking. She exhibits classic symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her desperate attempts to fit in, her willingness to endure abuse for even momentary acceptance, and her complete lack of self-worth all point to a character who has been systematically broken down by years of family trauma. The show presents this as comedy, but it's actually a textbook case study of emotional and psychological abuse. But here's where the lore gets really twisted. There's an unaired episode from Season 3 that was deemed too dark for broadcast. In this episode, titled Meg's Breaking Point, the character finally snaps and confronts her family about their treatment of her. The episode was fully animated and voiced before being pulled from the schedule. According to leaked production notes, the episode ended with Meg attempting to leave the family permanently, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by a manipulative speech from Peter about how the family needs her to abuse. The censored content doesn't stop there. Multiple episodes have had scenes removed that showed the long-term psychological effects of the family's treatment of Meg. These deleted scenes included Meg self-harming, having panic attacks, and showing signs of dissociation during family interactions. The network apparently felt these realistic consequences of abuse were too heavy for a comedy show, but they were perfectly fine with the abuse itself continuing episode after episode. Let's examine the most disturbing aspect of Meg's character development. Over the years, she's been conditioned to believe she deserves the mistreatment she receives. This is called learned helplessness, a psychological phenomenon where abuse victims begin to accept their situation as normal and stop trying to escape or improve their circumstances. The show has documented this process in real time, showing viewers exactly how psychological abuse breaks down a person's will to resist. Family Guy's treatment of Meg becomes even more disturbing when you consider the show's massive influence on popular culture. Millions of viewers, including impressionable teenagers, watch this show and learn that it's acceptable and even funny to systematically torment family members who are perceived as different or unpopular. The show has normalized family dysfunction to a degree that's genuinely concerning for child psychologists and family therapists. The voice acting reveals another layer of this disturbing lore. Mila Kunis has admitted in interviews that voicing Meg's more heartbreaking moments genuinely affects her emotionally. She's described having to take breaks during recording sessions when Meg's dialogue becomes too realistic in its portrayal of despair and hopelessness. The fact that professional voice actors struggle with this content should tell us something about how genuinely dark it really is. There's also the hidden symbolism in Meg's character design that most viewers never notice. Her pink beanie isn't just a fashion choice. It's meant to represent her attempt to hide and protect herself from the world. Her oversized clothes are armor against judgment and criticism. Even her glasses represent her desire to see the world clearly, while feeling that the world refuses to see her at all. Every aspect of her appearance tells the story of someone trying to disappear. The show's international versions reveal even more disturbing lore about Meg. In several countries, episodes featuring extreme Meg abuse have been edited or banned entirely. Some international broadcasters have added content warnings specifically for Meg-centric episodes, treating them as potentially harmful content rather than simple comedy. This raises serious questions about why American audiences are considered more accepting of this type of content. Here's something that will shock you about the show's merchandise and marketing. Despite being a main character, Meg is systematically excluded from most Family Guy promotional materials. Official merchandise featuring the Griffin family often leaves Meg out entirely, or places her in the background. This marketing strategy mirrors the character's treatment in the show itself, making her invisible even in promotional contexts. The fan community's relationship with Meg reveals the character's true cultural impact. While most characters have dedicated fan bases, Meg's fans are primarily people who identify with feeling like family outcasts themselves. The character has become an unintentional symbol for anyone who's ever felt unloved, unwanted, or systematically mistreated by those who should care for them most. This wasn't the creator's intention, but it's become Meg's most significant cultural legacy. Recent seasons have included subtle hints that the writers are beginning to recognize the problematic nature of Meg's treatment. There have been episodes where her family's behavior toward her is called out by other characters, and moments where Meg shows unexpected strength and self-respect. However, these moments are always followed by a return to the status quo, suggesting that the show is trapped by its own established dynamics. The most disturbing piece of Family Guy lore involving Meg comes from a writer's room story that was leaked several years ago. During the creation of an episode focused on Meg's birthday, the writing staff apparently spent an entire day brainstorming ways to make her special day as miserable as possible. The goal wasn't comedy. It was seeing how creatively they could torture the character psychologically while maintaining the show's tone. This reveals a level of systematic cruelty in the creative process that goes far beyond simple comedic writing. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Meg Griffin is what she represents in terms of the show's larger themes. Family Guy isn't actually a show about a dysfunctional family learning to love each other despite their flaws. It's a show about how families can systematically destroy their most vulnerable members while convincing themselves and others that it's all harmless fun. Meg is the canary in the coal mine, the character whose treatment reveals the true darkness lurking beneath the show's comedic surface. The psychological research that's been conducted on Family Guy's impact specifically cites Meg's treatment as potentially harmful to viewers who identify with her character. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to this type of normalized family abuse can actually affect how viewers perceive their own family dynamics. Young people who see themselves in Meg might begin to accept similar treatment in their own lives as normal or deserved. What makes this even more concerning is the show's longevity and cultural penetration. Meg Griffin has been suffering this abuse for over 2 decades, across hundreds of episodes, reaching billions of viewers worldwide. The character has become one of television's most recognizable symbols of systematic family scapegoating, and that influence extends far beyond entertainment into real social attitudes about family dynamics and acceptable behavior. The voice direction for Meg's character provides another window into how deliberately her suffering is crafted. Voice directors reportedly give specific instructions to emphasize Meg's pain, disappointment, and desperation in ways that make these emotions more pronounced and uncomfortable. The goal isn't just to make her a comedic target, but to make her suffering feel authentic enough to create a specific type of uncomfortable humor that some viewers apparently find entertaining. Industry insiders have revealed that several guest stars have refused to participate in episodes that focused heavily on Meg's mistreatment. Some notable actors and comedians have reportedly declined guest appearances specifically because they were uncomfortable contributing to storylines that portrayed systematic family abuse as comedic entertainment. This behind-the-scenes resistance suggests that even entertainment professionals recognize something disturbing about Meg's treatment. The international psychological community has actually used Family Guy, and specifically Meg's character arc, as a case study in how popular media can normalize abuse dynamics. The show is frequently cited in academic papers about media influence on social attitudes toward family violence and psychological abuse. Meg Griffin has become an unintentional but powerful example of how entertainment can shape cultural attitudes toward vulnerable populations. Here's the most disturbing realization of all. The systematic abuse of Meg Griffin isn't just a byproduct of lazy comedy writing or poor character development. It's a carefully maintained dynamic that serves a specific function in the show's structure. Meg exists to absorb all the darkness that would otherwise make the other characters completely unlikable. She's a lightning rod for cruelty, allowing Peter, Lois, and the others to commit terrible acts, while still being positioned as the protagonists viewers should root for. The merchandising data reveals something equally troubling about how the character is perceived by the show's marketing department. Internal documents from licensing deals show that Meg-focused products consistently underperform compared to other characters, leading to a systematic exclusion from product lines. This creates a feedback loop where the character's treatment in the show influences her commercial viability, which then influences how she's treated in future episodes. Family Guy's treatment of Meg Griffin represents something much darker than simple comedy, or even typical dysfunctional family dynamics. It's a systematic portrayal of how families can destroy their most vulnerable members while maintaining a facade of normalcy and even affection. The show has documented this process across hundreds of episodes, creating what may be television's most comprehensive depiction of long-term psychological abuse, disguised as entertainment. The character of Meg Griffin started as a typical teenage daughter character, but evolved into something much more disturbing. She's become a symbol of how systematic mistreatment can break down a person's sense of self-worth and hope. The show's writers have created a character whose primary function is to suffer, and they've done it with such consistency and creativity that it reveals something genuinely troubling about how our culture views acceptable targets for cruelty and abuse. So the next time you watch Family Guy and see Meg being mistreated by her family, remember that you're not just watching a simple cartoon comedy. You're witnessing the most comprehensive portrayal of systematic family abuse ever broadcast as entertainment. And the disturbing lore behind this character reveals truths about our culture that are far more unsettling than anything you'll see in a typical horror movie. The real question isn't why Meg is treated so badly, but why millions of viewers have been conditioned to find that treatment entertaining rather than horrifying. Picture this. You're watching Family Guy, laughing at Peter's latest ridiculous scheme, when suddenly you realize there's an entire universe of hidden stories, dark secrets, and mind-bending connections that you've been missing this whole time. Today, we're diving deep into the most shocking Family Guy lore that will completely change how you see the Griffin family forever. What if I told you that Brian Griffin has died multiple times throughout the series, and the Brian we know today might not even be the original? Or that Stewie's sexuality has been planned from the very beginning in ways that most fans never picked up on? We're about to uncover secrets that even die-hard Family Guy fans have overlooked. And trust me, some of these revelations will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds impossible but is actually confirmed canon. The Griffin family exists in a multiverse where infinite versions of themselves are living completely different lives. This isn't just a throwaway gag for a few episodes. Seth MacFarlane and the writers have created an intricate web of parallel universes that explains some of the show's biggest mysteries and most confusing timeline issues. Remember that episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different universes? That wasn't just a one-off adventure. Those alternate realities are constantly affecting the main timeline in ways the show rarely explicitly explains. In one universe, the Griffins are all dogs. In another, everyone's gender is swapped. But here's the kicker. Characters from these alternate dimensions have actually crossed over into the main timeline without anyone noticing. The most disturbing example involves Brian's death and resurrection. When Brian was killed by that car, the Brian that Stewie brought back wasn't technically the same Brian. The time travel created a paradox that split Brian's consciousness across multiple timelines. This explains why Brian's personality has shifted so dramatically over the years. He's literally not the same character anymore, and the show has been subtly hinting at this through his changing behavior patterns and contradictory character development. But Brian's multiversal confusion is nothing compared to what's really going on with Stewie Griffin. Most fans know that Stewie started as a one-dimensional evil baby stereotype, but the evolution of his character reveals something much more complex than simple character development. Stewie's intelligence isn't just advanced for a baby. It's literally supernatural, and there's evidence throughout the series that suggests he's not entirely human. Seth MacFarlane has dropped hints in interviews that Stewie's advanced intelligence comes from genetic experiments conducted by his real father. And no, we're not talking about Peter. The show has never definitively confirmed Peter as Stewie's biological father, despite what most fans assume. There are multiple episodes where Stewie's parentage is questioned, and when you piece together all the clues, a shocking picture emerges. Consider this. Stewie has built time machines, death rays, and teleportation devices using materials he somehow acquires as an infant. He speaks with a sophisticated British accent, despite being born in Rhode Island to parents with American accents. He demonstrates knowledge of complex scientific principles that would challenge PhD researchers. This isn't just cartoon logic. It's the result of genetic manipulation by a character we've met but never suspected. Francis Griffin, Peter's father, isn't just a religious fanatic. He's been secretly involved in genetic research for decades, using his religious connections as a front for experimental work on human enhancement. Stewie's intelligence, his early violent tendencies, and even his eventual character growth are all part of a long-term experiment in human development. Francis has been observing Stewie's progress throughout the series, appearing in episodes specifically to monitor his development. This explains why Stewie's character has evolved from purely evil to complex and multifaceted. It's not character development. It's the natural progression of Francis's experiment, reaching different phases. Stewie's growing emotional intelligence and his complicated relationship with his sexuality aren't random character choices. They're predictable outcomes of genetic modifications designed to create a superior human being. Speaking of Stewie's sexuality, the show's handling of this aspect reveals another layer of hidden lore that most viewers miss completely. Seth MacFarlane planned Stewie's sexual orientation from the very beginning, but not in the way most people think. Stewie's attraction to various characters throughout the series follows a specific pattern that reveals something disturbing about his psychological development. Every character Stewie has shown romantic or sexual interest and shares specific traits that connect back to his genetic programming. His crushes aren't random attractions. They're responses to psychological triggers implanted during his genetic modification. This is why his attractions seem inconsistent to casual viewers, but follow a clear pattern when analyzed closely. The most shocking revelation about Stewie's sexuality is that it's not actually about gender preference at all. It's about his subconscious recognition of genetic compatibility. Francis programmed Stewie to be attracted to individuals who would produce genetically superior offspring, regardless of gender. This explains why Stewie's attractions seem to shift and change, because they're not based on personal preference, but on biological programming he doesn't understand. But Stewie isn't the only Griffin family member hiding genetic secrets. Meg Griffin's constant suffering and social rejection aren't just running gags. They're the result of her being a failed experiment from the same program that created Stewie. Meg represents what happens when Francis's genetic modifications go wrong, creating someone intelligent enough to understand their social failure, but not intelligent enough to overcome it. This is why Meg occasionally displays flashes of brilliance or unexpected competence that disappear as quickly as they appear. She's fighting against genetic programming designed to suppress her abilities. Every time Meg almost achieves success or happiness, her modified genetics kick in to sabotage her progress. It's not bad luck or poor writing, it's built-in failure programming. The evidence for this theory is scattered throughout hundreds of episodes, but it becomes undeniable when you realize that Meg's failures always occur at crucial moments that would otherwise lead to her escape from the family's dysfunction. She's not meant to escape because her failure is essential to Francis's long-term experimental goals. Peter Griffin's role in this genetic conspiracy is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. Peter isn't the lovable idiot he appears to be. His stupidity is a carefully constructed facade designed to hide his role as an unwitting test subject and specimen collector for Francis's experiments. Peter's incredible survival rate, despite constant dangerous situations, isn't cartoon logic. It's enhanced genetic durability. Think about it. Peter has survived explosions, falls, poisonings, and countless other incidents that should have killed him multiple times over. His body's ability to recover from extreme trauma isn't natural. It's the result of genetic modifications that Francis administered without Peter's knowledge. Peter's stupidity serves as the perfect cover for these experiments, because no one suspects an idiot of being involved in complex genetic research. Peter's job history reveals the true scope of this conspiracy. Every workplace Peter has been associated with has connections to genetic research, pharmaceutical development, or human experimentation. The brewery, the toy factory, his various short-term employment, they're all fronts for research facilities where Peter unknowingly participates in ongoing experiments. Lois Griffin's background contains the most shocking revelations of all. Her wealthy family isn't just rich. They're one of the founding families of a secret organization dedicated to human genetic advancement. The Pewterschmidt fortune comes from decades of illegal human experimentation, and Lois's marriage to Peter wasn't a love story. It was an arranged pairing designed to produce genetically diverse test subjects. Lois knows about the experiments. She's always known. Her seemingly irrational decisions to stay with Peter despite his behavior make perfect sense when you realize she's not a victim of his stupidity. She's his handler. Every major life decision the Griffin family makes serves the research goals of Francis's genetic program. This explains why Lois alternates between loving mother and neglectful parent. Her maternal instincts conflict with her research obligations, creating the inconsistent parenting that defines her character. When she's nurturing and protective, she's responding to genuine maternal feelings. When she's dismissive or cruel, she's following research protocols that require emotional distance from test subjects. The most chilling aspect of Lois's involvement is that she genuinely loves her children while simultaneously facilitating their use as experimental subjects. She's trapped between her role as a mother and her obligations to the genetic research program that controls her family's life. Chris Griffin appears to be the only family member not directly involved in the genetic experiments, but his role is actually the most important of all. Chris represents the control group in Francis's multi-generational study. His normal intelligence, typical teenage behavior, and relatively stable personality provide the baseline against which Stewie's enhancements and Meg's failures are measured. But Chris isn't as normal as he appears. His artistic abilities and occasional flashes of insight suggest that he's inherited some of the genetic modifications without the extreme effects seen in his siblings. Chris might be the successful outcome Francis has been working toward, a genetically enhanced human who appears completely normal while possessing subtle advantages. The show has been building toward a revelation about Chris's true nature for years. His relationship with his family members, his inexplicable survival of dangerous situations, and his ability to succeed despite apparent limitations all point to him being the ultimate product of Francis's genetic program. Cleveland Brown's departure from Family Guy wasn't just about launching a spin-off show. Cleveland discovered the truth about the Griffin family's genetic experiments and had to be removed from Quahog before he could expose the conspiracy. His return to the show coincided with his acceptance of a role in maintaining the cover-up. Cleveland's friendship with Peter serves a specific purpose in Francis's research program. As Peter's closest friend, Cleveland provides emotional stability that prevents Peter from asking too many questions about his family's unusual circumstances. Cleveland's laid-back personality and reluctance to confront difficult truths make him the perfect unwitting accomplice. The most disturbing aspect of Cleveland's involvement is that he's begun to suspect the truth, but chooses to remain silent because he fears the consequences of exposure. Several episodes hint at Cleveland's growing awareness that something isn't right with the Griffin family, but he consistently chooses ignorance over investigation. Joe Swanson's paralysis isn't the result of a police accident as commonly believed. Joe discovered evidence of the genetic experiments during a routine investigation and was deliberately paralyzed to prevent him from pursuing the case further. His continued presence in the neighborhood serves as a warning to other potential investigators about the consequences of getting too close to the truth. Joe's incredible upper body strength and his ability to function as an effective police officer despite his disability aren't just inspirational character traits. They're evidence of genetic enhancement designed to compensate for his paralysis. Francis provided Joe with genetic modifications that enhance his remaining abilities in exchange for his silence about the experiments. The relationship between Joe and his family reflects his conflicted feelings about his situation. He genuinely loves his wife and son, but he knows that his involvement in covering up the Griffin family conspiracy puts them at risk. This explains the tension and occasional hostility in Joe's family interactions. Quagmire's over-sexualized personality and his antagonistic relationship with Brian serve specific purposes in maintaining the genetic conspiracy. Quagmire's promiscuity provides Francis with a steady stream of genetic material from diverse sources, expanding the database available for future experiments. His hatred of Brian stems from his subconscious recognition that Brian represents a threat to the stability of the experimental environment. Quagmire's pilot career allows him to transport research materials and subjects without detection. His frequent travel provides the perfect cover for moving genetic samples, experimental equipment, and even human subjects between research facilities. The show has never fully explained how Quagmire maintains his lifestyle on a pilot's salary, but his involvement in the genetic research program provides the missing financial motivation. The most shocking aspect of Quagmire's role is that his sexual behavior isn't driven by personal desire, but by genetic programming designed to maximize reproductive output for research purposes. Quagmire is as much a victim of Francis's experiments as the Griffin family, but his programming prevents him from recognizing his exploitation. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence isn't genuine stupidity. It's deliberate malpractice designed to cover up the genetic modifications in his patients. Every member of the Griffin family displays physical and psychological traits that would be immediately obvious to any competent physician, but Dr. Hartman consistently fails to notice or investigate these anomalies. Dr. Hartman's medical practice serves as the primary interface between Francis's research program and the subjects. Routine medical appointments provide opportunities to monitor the effects of genetic modifications, administer new treatments, and collect biological samples without arousing suspicion. The families trust Dr. Hartman with their health, never suspecting that he's actively working against their best interests. The most disturbing aspect of Dr. Hartman's involvement is that he genuinely believes he's helping his patients while simultaneously facilitating their exploitation. Francis has convinced Dr. Hartman that the genetic modifications are beneficial medical treatments, not experimental procedures. Dr. Hartman's incompetence isn't an act. It's programmed blindness to the ethical implications of his actions. The town of Quahog itself has been specifically chosen and modified to support Francis's genetic research program. The unusual concentration of bizarre characters and impossible situations isn't coincidental. It's the result of decades of careful population management and environmental manipulation. Every major location in Quahog serves a purpose in the research program. The Drunken Clam provides a controlled social environment for observing subject behavior. The Quahog Mall offers opportunities for psychological testing through consumer behavior analysis. Even the local news station serves as the information control mechanism to prevent subjects from learning about their situation. The most shocking revelation about Quahog is that many of its residents aren't permanent inhabitants, but rotating research subjects brought in for specific experiments. The town's population includes people from around the world who believe they're participating in legitimate research studies, while actually serving as unknowing test subjects for genetic modification programs. Mayor West's apparent insanity isn't a character quirk. It's the result of early genetic modification experiments that damaged his brain. Francis keeps Mayor West in power because his unpredictable behavior provides perfect cover for the unusual events that result from ongoing research activities. No one questions strange occurrences in a town run by an insane mayor. The supernatural and science fiction elements that occasionally appear in Family Guy aren't random cartoon logic. They're leaked information about the true scope of Francis's research program. Time travel, alternate dimensions, and genetic modifications are all real technologies being developed and tested in Quahog under the cover of cartoon impossibility. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they're using technology developed by Francis's research team. When characters encounter aliens or supernatural beings, they're interacting with other victims of genetic experimentation whose modifications have progressed to extreme levels. The show presents these events as comedy to prevent viewers from recognizing them as documentations of actual scientific research. The most terrifying aspect of this revelation is that Family Guy isn't entirely fictional. Seth MacFarlane has been using the show as a way to reveal information about real genetic experiments while maintaining plausible deniability by presenting the information as comedy. The more ridiculous the situation appears, the more likely it is to contain genuine information about secret research programs. This explains why Family Guy has remained popular despite its apparently random and inconsistent storytelling. Viewers subconsciously recognize the truth hidden within the comedy, creating a psychological response that feels like entertainment, but actually represents recognition of suppressed knowledge about human genetic manipulation. The implications of this hidden lore extend far beyond the show itself. If Family Guy is documenting real genetic research, then similar programs might be operating in communities around the world, using entertainment media as cover for revealing their activities. The show's international popularity might be part of a larger program to gradually accustomate global audiences to the reality of human genetic modification. The Griffin family's story isn't ending with the revelation of their experimental nature. It's building toward something much larger. Francis's research program has been preparing for a global expansion of genetic modification, using the Griffin family as proof of concept for technologies that will eventually be applied to entire populations. Stewie's evolution from evil baby to complex character represents the successful completion of the first phase of Francis's program. The next phase involves scaling up the genetic modifications to affect larger groups while maintaining the same level of control and observation that has been perfected through decades of work with the Griffin family. The most shocking aspect of this expansion is that it's already begun. Communities around the world are experiencing increases in unusual behavior, genetic anomalies, and impossible survival rates that mirror the patterns established in Quahog. Family Guy isn't just entertainment. It's the instruction manual for recognizing the signs of genetic modification in your own community. Seth MacFarlane's other shows, American Dad and The Cleveland Show, represent expansions of the same research program into different demographic groups and geographic locations. Each show tests different aspects of genetic modification and social control, using comedy as cover for documenting real experimental results. The interconnected universe of Seth MacFarlane's shows isn't just creative world-building. It's evidence of a coordinated research program that spans multiple communities and test populations. Characters who appear in multiple shows aren't just cameos. They're research subjects whose modifications require monitoring across different experimental environments. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something much more significant and disturbing. The show serves as both entertainment and documentation, comedy and confession, fiction and fact. Every episode contains information that viewers are meant to process subconsciously, while consciously dismissing it as cartoon nonsense. The most important aspect of understanding this hidden lore is recognizing that it changes everything about how we interpret not just Family Guy, but all entertainment media. If one show can serve as cover for revealing information about secret research programs, then other shows might be doing the same thing with different types of hidden information. The Griffin family's story continues to unfold with each new episode, gradually revealing more details about the genetic experiments that define their existence, while maintaining the comedic facade that prevents viewers from taking the revelations seriously. The show's longevity isn't just due to its humor, it's due to its function as an ongoing documentary of human genetic research. As we've discovered today, Family Guy contains layers of hidden lore that transform it from simple entertainment into something much more complex and significant. The Griffin family's genetic modifications, Francis's research program, and the town of Quahog's role as an experimental environment create a narrative that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't ruin the show's entertainment value. It enhances it by providing context for character behaviors and plot developments that otherwise seem random or inconsistent. Every joke becomes a potential clue, every character interaction becomes a data point, and every impossible situation becomes evidence of technologies that officially don't exist. The most important takeaway from exploring Family Guy's hidden lore is the recognition that entertainment media can serve multiple purposes simultaneously. Shows that appear to be simple comedy might be documenting real events. Characters that seem fictional might be based on real people, and situations that appear impossible might be representations of secret technologies. This revelation about Family Guy opens up possibilities for understanding other animated shows, comedy series, and even dramatic programs in new ways. The techniques used to hide information in plain sight through comedy and cartoon logic might be more common than we ever imagined. The Griffin family's story serves as a warning about the potential consequences of genetic modification research conducted without proper oversight or ethical considerations. Their suffering, despite its comedic presentation, represents real human costs of scientific advancement pursued without regard for individual dignity or consent. But their story also offers hope, because understanding the truth about their situation provides the knowledge necessary to recognize and resist similar programs in real life. By learning to see through the comedic facade, we develop the critical thinking skills needed to identify other instances where entertainment media might be used to hide important information. Family Guy will never look the same once you understand its hidden lore. But that's exactly the point. The show challenges viewers to look beyond surface appearances and question the nature of reality itself. In a world where truth is increasingly difficult to distinguish from fiction, Family Guy provides a masterclass in hidden information and the power of comedy to reveal uncomfortable truths. The next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details that don't quite make sense, the character behaviors that seem inconsistent, and the impossible situations that resolve too easily. You might discover that you're not just watching a cartoon, you're witnessing the documentation of one of the most significant secret research programs in human history. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled twice, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11th, which completely changed the show's trajectory forever? What if I told you that the Griffin family house has a secret basement that's been hidden in plain sight for over 2 decades? Or that Stewie's sexuality was originally planned to be revealed in a completely different way that would have shocked audiences worldwide? Welcome back to another deep dive into animated television history. I'm your host, and today we're exploring the most mind-blowing Family Guy lore that even die-hard fans probably don't know about. From behind-the-scenes secrets that nearly destroyed the show to hidden Easter eggs that connect to other animated universes, this is going to be one wild ride through Quahog and beyond. But before we jump into this rabbit hole of shocking revelations, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're about to uncover some seriously explosive content that YouTube's algorithm doesn't want you to see. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never watch Family Guy the same way again. Let's start with something that will absolutely blow your mind. Seth MacFarlane was originally supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001. Yes, you heard that right. The creator of Family Guy was supposed to be on the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. He missed the flight by just 10 minutes because of a hangover and a travel agent who gave him the wrong departure time. This near-death experience completely changed his perspective on life and directly influenced the darker, more satirical direction that Family Guy would eventually take in its later seasons. Think about this for a second. If MacFarlane had been on that flight, we would never have gotten the revival seasons of Family Guy, American Dad, or The Orville. The entire landscape of animated comedy would be completely different. But here's where it gets even more twisted. MacFarlane has admitted in interviews that this experience made him realize how fragile life really is, which is why the show became increasingly more nihilistic and dark as the years went on. The random violence, the complete disregard for character development, and the increasingly absurd situations all stem from this one life-changing moment. Now let's talk about something that will make you question everything you think you know about the Griffin family. The house at 31 Spooner Street has a secret basement that's been featured in multiple episodes. But here's what most people don't realize. This basement connects to a network of underground tunnels that run throughout all of Quahog. These tunnels have appeared in at least 7 different episodes across various seasons, but they're never explicitly connected or explained. In one episode, we see Peter emerge from a manhole cover near the Drunken Clam. In another, Stewie discovers a hidden passage behind his bedroom wall. That leads to what appears to be the same tunnel system. The most revealing moment comes in a throwaway gag where Brian is chasing a tennis ball and disappears down a storm drain, only to emerge from the Griffin's basement minutes later. This isn't just random comedy writing. There's actually a consistent underground geography to Quahog that the writers have been building for years. But here's where it gets really interesting. These tunnels connect to similar underground systems in other Seth MacFarlane shows. If you pay close attention to certain episodes of American Dad, you'll notice that the CIA headquarters has access to tunnels that look remarkably similar to the ones in Family Guy. There's even a brief scene in the Cleveland show where Cleveland falls through his floorboards and lands in what appears to be the same tunnel system before the scene cuts away. This suggests that all of MacFarlane's animated universes might actually be connected through this underground network. It's like a multiverse theory, but instead of parallel dimensions, it's all happening in the same world with hidden connections that most viewers never notice. Speaking of hidden connections, let's talk about Stewie Griffin and the most controversial aspect of his character development. Everyone knows that Stewie's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years, with MacFarlane giving contradictory statements about whether the character is gay, straight, or something else entirely. But here's what most people don't know. There was originally a planned storyline that would have definitively answered this question, and it was going to be revealed in the most shocking way possible. According to leaked production documents from 2008, there was a planned two-part episode called Stewie's Choice that would have featured an adult version of Stewie traveling back in time to have a conversation with his infant self about his future identity. The adult Stewie was going to reveal that he's actually pansexual, and that his early obsession with matricide was actually a misdirected expression of his confusion about his own identity and place in the world. The episode was going to explore how Stewie's advanced intelligence and emotional maturity as an infant made him aware of concepts and feelings that he couldn't properly process or understand. His violent fantasies about Lois were supposed to represent his frustration with being trapped in a body and family situation that couldn't accommodate his true nature. It would have been groundbreaking television, addressing themes of identity, sexuality, and family dynamics in a way that animated comedy had never attempted before. But the episode was scrapped at the last minute because Fox executives were concerned about the potential backlash from conservative viewers and advertisers. Instead, we got the ambiguous approach that the show has maintained ever since, with Stewie's sexuality remaining deliberately unclear. MacFarlane has expressed regret about this decision in later interviews, saying that he wishes he had fought harder to tell that story. This brings us to one of the most shocking pieces of Family Guy lore that involves the show's cancellation and revival. Most fans know that Family Guy was canceled after 3 seasons and then brought back due to strong DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns. But what most people don't know is that during the cancellation period, there was a secret season that was produced but never aired. This lost season, sometimes referred to as Season 0, by animators who worked on it, consisted of 13 episodes that were completed between 2003 and 2004. These episodes were darker, more experimental, and pushed boundaries that even the current version of Family Guy wouldn't dare cross. One episode featured Peter accidentally killing a neighbor and the entire family having to cover it up. Another showed Brian dealing with severe depression and contemplating suicide after a failed relationship. The most controversial episode in this lost season was titled The Real Quahog, and it was essentially a behind-the-scenes look at what the Griffin family's life would be like if they were real people instead of cartoon characters. It showed them dealing with real consequences for their actions, real trauma from their experiences, and real psychological damage from the constant chaos in their lives. Peter was portrayed as an alcoholic with severe brain damage from his countless accidents. Lois was shown struggling with depression and prescription drug abuse. Chris was in therapy for the emotional abuse he'd suffered, and Meg was revealed to be self-harming as a way to cope with her family's treatment of her. This episode was deemed too dark and realistic for television, even by Adult Swim standards. The entire lost season was shelved, and when Family Guy was revived in 2005, the show went in a completely different direction, embracing the absurdist comedy that defines the modern era of the show. But here's the really crazy part. Some of the storylines and jokes from these lost episodes have been recycled and incorporated into later seasons, but in much more sanitized and comedic ways. If you know what to look for, you can actually spot elements from the lost seasons scattered throughout episodes from seasons 4 through 10. Let's shift gears and talk about something that will completely change how you view the show's animation and production. Family Guy uses a technique called limited animation, which is common in television cartoons, but they've hidden several advanced animation techniques throughout the series that most viewers never notice. There are at least 12 episodes that feature what animation experts call rotoscoping, where live-action footage is traced over to create more realistic movement. This technique was used primarily in fight scenes and dance sequences, but it was also used in some of the show's most emotional moments to create more nuanced facial expressions and body language. The most impressive example of this is in the episode where Brian and Stewie are trapped in a bank vault. The entire conversation between the two characters was actually performed by live actors first, with Seth MacFarlane and another voice actor acting out the scene in a recording studio. This footage was then rotoscoped to create the animation, which is why that episode feels so much more intimate and realistic than typical Family Guy episodes. This technique has been used sparingly throughout the series, always in moments where the writers wanted to create genuine emotional connection with the audience. It's one of the reasons why certain episodes feel so much more impactful than others, even though most viewers can't pinpoint exactly why. Now let's dive into something that connects Family Guy to real-world events in ways that are both fascinating and slightly disturbing. The show has accidentally predicted or coincidentally referenced several major news events before they actually happened. This isn't just about the Boston Marathon bombing episode that was pulled from circulation. There are dozens of smaller predictions and coincidences that suggest either incredible luck or some kind of insider knowledge. In a 2001 episode, there's a throwaway joke about airport security being ineffective that aired just 2 months before September 11th. A 2003 episode featured a gag about a pandemic shutting down the world that's eerily similar to what happened with COVID-19 17 years later. There's even an episode from 2007 that jokes about social media destroying democracy, which feels remarkably prescient given everything that's happened with Facebook and Twitter in recent years. The most unsettling prediction came in a 2004 episode that featured a throwaway gag about a reality TV star becoming president and destroying American foreign policy. This was 5 years before Donald Trump even appeared on The Apprentice, and 13 years before he actually became president. These coincidences have led to conspiracy theories about the show's writers having inside information or being part of some larger cultural manipulation scheme. While that's obviously nonsense, it does highlight how satirical comedy often accidentally stumbles onto truth by exaggerating current trends to their logical extremes. Here's something that will blow your mind about the show's voice acting. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice multiple main characters. He actually performs entire conversations with himself, acting out complex emotional scenes between different characters in real time. This requires an incredible level of vocal and emotional control that most people don't appreciate. But here's the really impressive part. MacFarlane has admitted that he sometimes gets so deep into character during recording sessions that he actually forgets which voice he's supposed to be using. There are outtakes where you can hear him starting a line as Peter and finishing it as Brian, or beginning as Stewie and ending as Quagmire. These mistakes are usually caught in editing, but occasionally they make it into the final episode as intentional jokes or character moments. The most impressive vocal performance in the show's history is probably the episode where Stewie and Brian are trapped in the vault, which we mentioned earlier. MacFarlane performed both sides of that 20-minute conversation live, switching between characters fluidly while maintaining the emotional authenticity of both performances. It's a masterclass in voice acting that most people take for granted because they're focused on the jokes and story. Let's talk about something that connects Family Guy to the broader world of animation in ways that most people never realize. The show has actually influenced the development of animation technology in significant ways. The techniques developed for Family Guy's cutaway gags have been adopted by other animated shows, and some of the software innovations created specifically for Family Guy are now industry standard. The show was one of the first animated series to use digital ink and paint techniques exclusively, abandoning traditional cell animation years before other shows made the switch. This allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but it also created a distinctive visual style that influenced countless other animated series. More importantly, Family Guy pioneered several techniques for creating rapid scene transitions and visual gags that are now used throughout animated television. The quick cuts, the seamless transitions between reality and fantasy sequences, and the integration of different animation styles within single episodes all originated with Family Guy and have since become standard tools in animated comedy. Here's something that will surprise you about the show's writing process. Unlike most television shows, Family Guy doesn't use a traditional writer's room structure. Instead, the writers work in small teams of 2 or 3 people, developing individual segments and gags that are then assembled into full episodes by a separate editorial team. This explains why Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of loosely connected skits rather than coherent narratives. It's not a bug in the writing process, it's a feature. The show is designed to work like a comedy variety show, with each segment standing on its own while contributing to a larger comedic experience. The cutaway gags are written by a completely different team of writers who specialize in creating short-form comedy content. These writers often don't even know what episodes their gags will be used in. They just create libraries of content that the editorial team draws from when assembling episodes. This system allows for incredible creative flexibility, but it also means that the show's quality can vary wildly from episode to episode, depending on which combination of writers and editors are working on any given installment. Now let's explore something that connects Family Guy to other forms of media in unexpected ways. The show has actually influenced the development of internet meme culture more than most people realize. Many of the comedic techniques that are now standard in online comedy content originated with Family Guy's approach to humor. The random cutaway gag structure that defines Family Guy is essentially the same format used in modern social media content, where short, disconnected pieces of entertainment are strung together to create longer experiences. The show's influence can be seen in everything from TikTok videos to YouTube compilations to internet memes. More specifically, Family Guy popularized the idea of referential humor that doesn't require deep knowledge of the reference to be funny. The show's pop culture parodies work even if you don't know what's being parodied, which is now a fundamental principle of internet comedy. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy lore, let's talk about the most shocking revelation of all. There's evidence to suggest that the show is actually much more carefully planned and deliberately crafted than its chaotic surface suggests. Despite appearing random and improvisational, Family Guy follows complex narrative patterns and character development arcs that span multiple seasons. The show uses what narrative theorists call spiral storytelling, where characters appear to remain static but actually undergo subtle changes that accumulate over time. Peter may seem like the same character he was in Season 1, but if you watch carefully, you can see how his experiences have gradually shaped his worldview and behavior patterns. This sophisticated storytelling approach is disguised by the show's crude humor and seemingly random structure, but it's there for viewers who know how to look for it. It's one of the reasons why Family Guy has remained culturally relevant for over 2 decades, while many other animated comedies have faded into obscurity. The show's longevity isn't just due to its shock value or pop culture references. It's because underneath all the chaos and controversy, there's actually a carefully constructed narrative universe with consistent internal logic and genuine character development. So there you have it. Family Guy isn't just a random collection of offensive jokes and pop culture references. It's a complex, carefully crafted piece of entertainment that has influenced animation technology, comedy writing, internet culture, and narrative television in ways that most people never realize. These revelations should completely change how you watch the show going forward. Every episode contains layers of meaning, technical innovation, and cultural commentary that extend far beyond the surface-level humor. The Griffin family's adventures in Quahog are actually part of a much larger and more sophisticated entertainment universe than anyone could have imagined. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden depths of Family Guy, make sure you like and subscribe for more deep dives into the secret histories of your favorite shows. And let me know in the comments which piece of Family Guy lore surprised you the most. Until next time, keep looking for the hidden stories behind the stories you think you know. Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact, rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. the show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable, suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time, with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog. Did you know that Family Guy has been secretly building one of the most complex and disturbing universes in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the hidden lore that connects every bizarre moment, every throwaway joke, and every seemingly random cutaway into something far more sinister than you ever imagined. Get comfortable, because what you're about to discover about the Griffin family and their world will completely change how you see this animated sitcom forever. Welcome to a journey through the darkest corners of Quahog, where nothing is quite what it seems, and every laugh might be masking something truly terrifying. I'm going to take you through the most mind-bending theories, hidden connections, and disturbing implications that have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. This isn't just about cartoon humor anymore. This is about a carefully constructed reality where time itself breaks down, where characters live and die and return without explanation, and where the very fabric of existence seems to bend to the whims of a family that might not even be human. Let's start with something that's been bothering fans for years. Have you ever noticed how characters in Family Guy seem to exist in multiple states of reality simultaneously? Peter Griffin has died countless times throughout the series, yet he continues to appear in subsequent episodes with no explanation. This isn't just cartoon logic at work. There's something much deeper happening here, something that suggests the Griffin family exists outside the normal rules of life and death. Consider this carefully. In one episode, Peter is literally crushed by a falling piano. In another, he's shot point blank in the chest. He's been decapitated, blown up, and killed in ways too numerous to count. Yet he always returns, usually within the same episode, sometimes carrying the memory of his death, sometimes acting as if nothing happened at all. This pattern extends to every member of the family, creating what theorists call the resurrection phenomenon. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The show has established that Peter remembers some of his deaths, but not others. In certain episodes, he makes direct references to previous fatal incidents, treating them as if they were merely inconvenient experiences rather than life-ending events. This suggests that the Griffin family exists in a state of quantum immortality, where their consciousness simply shifts to alternate timelines whenever they die in one reality. The implications of this are staggering. If the Griffins can't truly die, what does that make them? Are they some kind of interdimensional beings? Are they trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth? Or are they perhaps already dead, existing in some kind of purgatorial state where their worst impulses are allowed to manifest without permanent consequences? This theory gains even more weight when you examine the nature of their world. Quahog, Rhode Island, isn't just an ordinary small town. It's a place where the laws of physics bend and break on a daily basis. Characters regularly fall from impossible heights without injury, survive explosions that should level city blocks, and experience transformations that defy biological possibility. The town itself seems to reshape itself to accommodate whatever narrative demands the moment requires. Look at the Clam, the local bar where Peter spends most of his time. The interior layout changes from episode to episode, sometimes dramatically. Rooms appear and disappear, the building size fluctuates wildly, and the bar somehow manages to accommodate everything from small, intimate gatherings to massive concerts and events. This isn't just inconsistent animation. It's evidence that reality itself is malleable in Quahog. The same phenomenon affects the Griffin house. Rooms appear when needed and vanish when not required. The basement sometimes contains a simple laundry area. Other times, it's a vast underground complex with multiple levels and impossible architecture. The house has been destroyed and rebuilt so many times that it's essentially become a ship of Theseus' paradox. At what point did the original Griffin home cease to exist and become something else entirely? But the most disturbing aspect of Family Guy lore involves the nature of time itself in this universe. The show has been running for over 20 years, yet the characters haven't aged. Stewie remains a baby, Meg is still a teenager, and Chris continues through high school perpetually. This isn't just a cartoon convention. The show has explicitly addressed the passage of time on multiple occasions, creating paradoxes that suggest something is fundamentally wrong with how time functions in their reality. Consider Stewie's advanced intelligence and technological capabilities. This isn't just a genius baby. Stewie has access to time travel technology, advanced weaponry, and scientific knowledge that surpasses anything available in our reality. He's built nuclear weapons in his bedroom, created sentient robots, and developed interdimensional travel devices. These aren't the inventions of a human child, no matter how intelligent. They're the creations of something far beyond human understanding. The time travel episodes reveal even more disturbing implications. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they encounter multiple versions of themselves and their family members. Some of these versions are dramatically different, suggesting that the timeline they inhabit is just one of countless variations. In some timelines, the family members have different personalities, different relationships, and different fates. This raises the question of whether the Griffins we follow are even the original versions of these characters, or just one set among infinite possibilities. Brian's character provides another piece of this cosmic puzzle. He's a dog who walks upright, drives cars, drinks alcohol, and engages in complex philosophical discussions. The show treats this as perfectly normal, but the implications are horrifying when you consider the biological impossibility of his existence. Brian isn't just an anthropomorphic cartoon character. He's an aberration, a violation of natural law that somehow exists within this distorted reality. Brian's atheism becomes particularly significant in this context. He's the only character who consistently questions the nature of existence and reality. His philosophical discussions with Stewie often touch on themes of mortality, consciousness, and the meaning of existence. It's as if Brian is the only character who recognizes that their reality is fundamentally wrong, yet he's trapped within it just like everyone else. The show's treatment of religion and spirituality adds another layer to this mystery. Characters regularly encounter divine beings, travel to heaven and hell, and interact with supernatural forces. These aren't metaphorical episodes or dreams. They're presented as literal experiences within the show's canon. Death himself is a recurring character, depicted as a fallible being who can be tricked, bargained with, or even temporarily replaced. This suggests that the afterlife in the Family Guy universe is just as chaotic and rule-bending as the mortal realm. Peter's encounters with God reveal perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this reality. God is portrayed as incompetent, petty, and frequently absent from his duties. He makes mistakes, gets involved in trivial disputes, and seems to have lost control of his own creation. If God himself is fallible and chaotic in this universe, it explains why reality operates with such inconsistent and disturbing rules. The chicken fights represent another crucial element in understanding the true nature of this reality. Peter's battles with Ernie the giant chicken aren't just random comedy sequences. They're reality-breaking events that cause massive destruction across Quahog, yet somehow never result in permanent consequences. Buildings are destroyed, innocent people are presumably killed, and the entire infrastructure of the town is regularly devastated. Yet everything returns to normal by the next episode, as if these catastrophic events never happened. This suggests that Quahog exists in a state of constant reset, where major traumatic events are simply erased from collective memory. The townspeople continue their lives as if nothing happened, which implies either mass amnesia or the existence of multiple parallel realities that overlap and replace each other. The chicken fights might actually be tears in the fabric of reality itself, moments when the artificial nature of their world becomes visible through the chaos. The cutaway gags provide even more evidence of reality distortion. When Peter begins a story with his characteristic phrase about a time that's worse than something else, the narrative literally shifts to a completely different reality. These aren't just flashbacks or memories. They're alternate dimensions where different rules apply and different versions of history have played out. The fact that Peter can access these realities at will suggests he has some level of interdimensional awareness or control. Some of these cutaway realities are obviously fictional. referencing movies, television shows, or historical events. But others seem to be genuine, alternate versions of the Family Guy universe where small changes have created dramatically different outcomes. This creates a multiverse structure where Peter's consciousness can jump between realities, experiencing different versions of events and bringing that knowledge back to his primary timeline. Meg's role in this cosmic horror becomes clearer when you examine how other characters treat her. The family's abuse of Meg isn't just mean-spirited humor. It's ritualistic and consistent across all timelines and realities. Even in alternate universes where other aspects of their lives are different, the treatment of Meg remains constant. This suggests she serves some kind of specific function in maintaining the stability of their reality. Some theories propose that Meg is actually the anchor point that keeps their chaotic universe from completely falling apart. Her suffering might be the price paid for the family's immortality and reality-bending abilities. The more they abuse her, the more stable their impossible existence becomes. This would explain why even when Meg tries to improve her situation or gain acceptance, the universe seems to conspire against her, forcing her back into her role as the family scapegoat. Lois presents her own mysteries. Despite being married to Peter and living in the same chaotic reality, she often displays knowledge and abilities that seem beyond her apparent character. She's multilingual, has extensive combat training, has connections to wealthy and powerful families, and occasionally demonstrates skills that suggest a much more complex background than her suburban housewife persona would indicate. Her maiden name is Pewterschmidt, connecting her to a family of extreme wealth and influence. But the show has revealed that the Pewterschmidt fortune comes from sources that are never fully explained. They have connections to Nazi Germany, mysterious business dealings, and enough power to manipulate major political and economic events. This isn't just old money. This is money that comes from sources that operate outside normal human society. Lois's piano playing takes on new significance in this context. Music has always been associated with supernatural and reality-altering powers in mythology and fiction. When Lois plays piano, she often enters a trance-like state where she becomes completely absorbed in the music. Could her playing be some kind of ritual that helps maintain the stability of their distorted reality? Is she unconsciously channeling forces that keep their impossible world functioning? The town of Quahog itself contains numerous locations that defy logical explanation. The Drunken Clam Bar exists in a constant state of flux. Tom Tucker's news station somehow manages to cover every bizarre event that happens in town, no matter how impossible or reality-breaking it might be. The grocery store, the movie theater, and other local businesses seem to have unlimited resources and the ability to accommodate whatever the plot requires. But perhaps most disturbing is Quahog's relationship with the outside world. Characters regularly travel to other cities and countries, yet these locations often seem just as distorted and rule-breaking as Quahog itself. When the family goes to Europe, they encounter the same kind of impossible situations and reality-bending events they experience at home. This suggests that the distortion isn't limited to their hometown, but extends throughout their entire universe. Cleveland's move to Virginia and subsequent return provides another clue to the nature of their reality. During his absence, Cleveland had his own show in a different location with different characters and storylines. Yet when he returned to Quahog, he seamlessly reintegrated into the Family Guy universe as if nothing had changed. This suggests that characters can literally move between different fictional realities while maintaining their essential identities. The evil monkey in Chris's closet represents one of the most obvious supernatural elements that the family accepts without question. This isn't just a monkey that happens to live in their house. It's a malevolent entity that exists partially outside normal reality, able to appear and disappear at will, and possessing knowledge and abilities that suggest it's not bound by the same rules as other characters. When the evil monkey's backstory was finally revealed, it showed a complex history involving betrayal, revenge, and supernatural justice. But the fact that Chris lived with this entity for years without the family taking serious action suggests they're either unable to perceive the true nature of supernatural threats or they're so accustomed to reality-bending phenomena that they've become desensitized to genuine danger. The show's treatment of violence provides another disturbing window into the nature of their reality. Characters regularly engage in brutal combat, use deadly weapons, and inflict injuries that should result in permanent disability or death. Yet these violent encounters rarely have lasting consequences. Bodies heal impossibly quickly, psychological trauma is ignored, and characters continue their relationships as if attempted murder was just a minor disagreement. This isn't just cartoon violence logic. The show has established that pain and injury do matter in their world. Characters react to pain, seek medical treatment, and sometimes suffer long-term consequences from their actions. But the threshold for what constitutes permanent harm seems to be much higher than in normal reality, suggesting that their physical forms are more resilient or fundamentally different from normal human bodies. The celebrity appearances in Family Guy create another layer of reality confusion. When real celebrities appear on the show, they're often portrayed in ways that are completely at odds with their real-world personas. Some are depicted as evil, others as incompetent, and many are shown in situations that would be impossible in reality. These aren't just parodies or satirical representations. They're presented as literal encounters within the show's universe. This raises questions about the relationship between the Family Guy universe and our reality. Are these actual alternate versions of real people, or are they fictional constructs created by whatever force maintains their distorted world? The fact that these celebrity characters often have knowledge of events from the real world suggests some kind of connection to our reality, but their behavior and circumstances are so different that they can't be the same individuals. Adam West's portrayal as the mayor of Quahog provides the most extensive example of this phenomenon. The real Adam West was involved with the show for many years before his death, playing a version of himself that bore little resemblance to his actual personality. This fictional Adam West had supernatural experiences, engaged in bizarre political policies, and interacted with the Griffin family as if they were real people in his world. The fact that the real Adam West participated in creating this alternate version of himself suggests a blurring of the lines between fiction and reality that extends beyond the show's universe. It's as if the Family Guy reality has the ability to reach into our world and influence real people to participate in its narrative structure. The show's handling of historical events reveals another disturbing aspect of their reality. Characters regularly travel back in time to witness or participate in major historical moments, but their presence often changes the outcome of these events in ways that should have massive consequences for their present-day reality. Yet somehow the timeline always corrects itself, or the changes are ignored in subsequent episodes. This suggests that history itself is malleable in their universe, subject to constant revision and correction by forces that operate outside normal temporal mechanics. The Griffin family's ability to witness and alter historical events without permanent consequences implies they exist outside the normal flow of cause and effect. Stewie's sexual orientation and romantic relationships add another layer of complexity to the reality distortion. The show has never definitively established Stewie's sexuality, leaving it deliberately ambiguous despite numerous hints and references. This isn't just uncertainty about a character's personal life. It's as if Stewie exists in a state of quantum sexuality, where all possibilities remain open simultaneously. When Stewie does engage in romantic or sexual situations, they often involve time travel, alternate realities, or impossible circumstances. His relationship with himself from alternate timelines, his interactions with future versions of other characters, and his romantic encounters with beings from different realities all suggest that normal human relationship dynamics don't apply to him. Brian's romantic relationships follow similar patterns of reality distortion. He's been involved with human women, other dogs, and beings from alternate realities. These relationships are treated as normal within the show's universe, but they represent violations of biological and social norms that should be impossible in any consistent reality. The recurring theme of characters breaking the fourth wall provides perhaps the most direct evidence that they're aware of their fictional nature. When characters make references to the show itself, acknowledge the presence of cameras, or directly address the audience, they're demonstrating consciousness of their status as fictional constructs. Yet they continue to behave as if their reality is genuine and consequential. This creates a paradox where characters are simultaneously aware of their fictional nature and committed to maintaining the illusion of their reality. It's as if they're trapped in a performance they can't escape, forced to continue their roles even though they understand the artificial nature of their existence. The show's treatment of mental illness and psychological trauma becomes particularly disturbing when viewed through this lens. Characters regularly experience events that should result in severe psychological damage, yet they continue functioning as if nothing happened. Peter has been through countless traumatic experiences. Meg has suffered years of abuse and rejection, and Chris has dealt with supernatural threats and family dysfunction that should have lasting psychological effects. Their apparent immunity to psychological trauma suggests either that their minds operate differently from normal humans, or that the reality they inhabit somehow prevents the formation of lasting psychological damage. Either possibility raises questions about the fundamental nature of their consciousness and identity. The economic system of Quahog defies logical explanation. Peter works at a brewery, yet the family maintains a middle-class lifestyle that includes expensive vacations, constant dining out, and the ability to replace destroyed property without apparent financial strain. The cost of living in their reality seems to operate on completely different principles than any real economic system. Local businesses somehow manage to stay open despite constant destruction and the bizarre behavior of their customers. The bank continues to provide services, even though it's regularly robbed or destroyed. The hospital treats impossible injuries and supernatural conditions as routine medical cases. This suggests an economic system that operates independently of normal supply and demand principles. The show's treatment of technology reveals another aspect of their reality distortion. Characters have access to futuristic devices and impossible inventions, yet they also use outdated technology and live in what appears to be contemporary society. Time periods blend together in ways that suggest their reality exists outside normal temporal progression. Stewie's advanced technology coexists with Peter's primitive understanding of basic concepts. Lois uses modern communication devices while also displaying knowledge of historical events that she shouldn't have witnessed. This temporal confusion extends throughout their universe, creating a reality where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. The educational system in Quahog provides another window into the distorted nature of their reality. Chris and Meg attend high school, yet their education seems to consist primarily of bizarre adventures and encounters with supernatural phenomena. Their teachers are often incompetent or malevolent, and the curriculum appears to have no connection to real educational standards. Despite this chaotic educational environment, the characters somehow maintain enough knowledge to function in society. They can read, write, and perform basic mathematical calculations when the plot requires it, yet they also display shocking ignorance about fundamental concepts. This selective competence suggests that knowledge in their reality is distributed based on narrative necessity rather than logical learning processes. Religious and spiritual experiences in the Family Guy universe are treated as literal events rather than matters of faith or belief. Characters regularly encounter angels, demons, divine beings, and supernatural forces as physical presences in their world. These encounters often contradict established religious doctrines and present theological concepts in chaotic and illogical ways. The fact that multiple religious and spiritual systems seem to exist simultaneously in their reality suggests a universe where belief itself shapes existence. Different characters' spiritual experiences reflect their personal expectations rather than consistent universal truths, implying that reality adapts itself to accommodate conflicting belief systems. As we reach the end of this exploration into the hidden depths of Family Guy lore, the picture that emerges is far more complex and disturbing than the surface comedy would suggest. We're looking at a universe where the fundamental laws of reality are constantly in flux, where consciousness and identity operate on principles that defy normal understanding, and where the characters exist in a state of perpetual uncertainty about their own nature and existence. The Griffin family isn't just a dysfunctional cartoon family. They're entities, trapped in a reality that operates outside the normal rules of existence, forced to repeat patterns of behavior while occasionally glimpsing the artificial nature of their world. Their immortality comes at the cost of genuine growth and change. Their relationships are defined by roles they cannot escape, and their reality is maintained through forces they cannot understand or control. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something resembling cosmic horror, where the greatest terror isn't monsters or supernatural threats, but the gradual realization that existence itself might be fundamentally meaningless and arbitrary. The character's ability to laugh and find humor in their situation becomes an act of defiance against the absurdity of their existence, or perhaps the only coping mechanism available to consciousness trapped in an impossible reality. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most disturbing truths hide behind the most innocent laughter. Did you know that Family Guy has been secretly building one of the most complex fictional universes on television for over 2 decades? And tonight we're diving deep into every hidden connection, conspiracy theory, and mind-bending detail that will either put you to sleep or keep you awake all night thinking about how Brian Griffin might actually be the smartest character in animated television history. Welcome to the most comprehensive exploration of Family Guy lore ever assembled, where we'll uncover the hidden patterns that connect seemingly random episodes across 20-plus seasons, reveal the dark psychological underpinnings of Peter Griffin's behavior, and examine why this seemingly simple animated sitcom contains more philosophical depth than most people realize. Let's start with something that seems innocent on the surface but becomes deeply unsettling when you really think about it. The fact that Stewie Griffin, a 1-year-old baby, possesses technology that surpasses anything available in our current reality. His time machine alone represents engineering capabilities that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet nobody in his family seems to notice or care that their infant has created devices that violate the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. The implications of Stewie's inventions extend far beyond simple comedy. When you consider that he's built ray guns, mind control devices, teleportation equipment, and vehicles capable of interdimensional travel, all while maintaining the physical and cognitive limitations of a toddler. This suggests either that the Griffin family exists in a universe where the laws of science operate completely differently, or that Stewie himself represents something far more extraordinary than a precocious child. Think about the episodes where Stewie travels through time and encounters multiple versions of himself from different timelines. Each iteration of Stewie possesses the same impossible technological capabilities, which implies that his genius transcends individual timeline variations. This consistency across dimensional boundaries suggests that Stewie's intelligence might be a fundamental constant in the Family Guy multiverse, rather than a random genetic anomaly. But here's where things get really interesting when we examine the relationship between Stewie's technological capabilities and Brian's intellectual development throughout the series. Brian Griffin starts as a relatively normal talking dog who enjoys literature and maintains liberal political views. However, as the seasons progress, his personality becomes increasingly complex, cynical, and philosophically sophisticated, almost as if he's being influenced by prolonged exposure to Stewie's advanced technology and interdimensional adventures. The evolution of Brian's character raises questions about the nature of consciousness and intelligence in the Family Guy universe. If a dog can develop human-level cognitive abilities and engage in complex, philosophical discussions, then what does this say about the fundamental nature of reality in Quahog? The fact that Brian's intelligence continues expanding throughout the series while other characters remain relatively static suggests that something unique is happening to him. Specifically, consider the episodes where Brian dies and is replaced by Vinny, the replacement dog, who, despite being the same species, lacks Brian's intellectual capabilities. This proves that Brian's intelligence isn't simply a species-wide trait, but something specifically tied to his individual consciousness. The temporary replacement storyline also demonstrates how integral Brian has become to the family dynamic, not just as a pet, but as a legitimate family member whose absence creates genuine emotional trauma. The relationship between Brian and Stewie represents one of the most complex friendships in animated television, spanning adventures through time, space, and alternate dimensions. Their bond transcends typical pet-owner relationships and approaches something resembling true intellectual partnership. This dynamic becomes even more fascinating when you consider that their adventures often involve visiting timelines where their relationship takes different forms, sometimes as friends, sometimes as enemies, and occasionally as something approaching equals moving deeper into Family Guy lore. We encounter the recurring theme of Peter Griffin's seemingly limitless capacity for causing destruction, while somehow avoiding serious consequences. Peter has crashed vehicles through buildings, started international incidents, caused environmental disasters, and engaged in behavior that would realistically result in imprisonment or death. Yet he continues living his suburban lifestyle with minimal repercussions for his actions. This pattern suggests that Peter might exist within some kind of protective narrative bubble, where conventional rules of cause and effect don't apply in the same way they would for normal people. The consistency of his survival across increasingly dangerous situations implies either supernatural intervention or existence within a simulated reality where certain characters are programmed to be essentially indestructible. The Griffin family's relationship with death itself provides another layer of complexity to the series' lore. Multiple characters have died and been resurrected, Brian's temporary death being the most notable example, but there are numerous instances where characters should have died, but somehow survived catastrophic events. This casual relationship with mortality suggests that the Family Guy universe operates under different existential rules than our reality. Quahog itself emerges as a character in the series when you examine how the town responds to the Griffin family's constant chaos. Despite Peter's regular destruction of property and public safety, the community continues functioning normally as if nothing happened. This resilience suggests either that Quahog exists outside normal space-time, or that the town itself possesses some kind of regenerative properties that allow it to recover from damage. The recurring characters in Family Guy form an intricate web of relationships that span decades of episodes, each bringing their own psychological complexities to the narrative. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the series creates interesting questions about character continuity and the nature of friendship in long-running animated series. His experiences in his own spin-off show technically exist within the same universe, but rarely get referenced in Family Guy proper, creating a kind of parallel narrative space. Glenn Quagmire represents perhaps the most problematic character in terms of Family Guy lore, because his behavior often crosses lines that would be completely unacceptable in real life. Yet he's treated as a quirky neighbor rather than a legitimate threat. This treatment reveals something disturbing about the moral framework of the Family Guy universe, where certain types of harmful behavior are normalized through repetition and comedic presentation. The Chicken Man fights between Peter and Ernie. The giant chicken deserves special attention because they represent some of the most elaborately choreographed sequences in the entire series. These battles often span multiple locations, involve massive collateral damage, and demonstrate fighting capabilities that far exceed what either character should possess based on their apparent physical attributes. The chicken fights serve as almost mythological episodes within the series where normal rules are completely suspended. When examining these extended fight sequences, you notice they follow patterns similar to classic mythology, where heroes and monsters engage in battles that reshape the landscape around them. The destruction caused during these fights would realistically devastate Quahog's infrastructure and economy. Yet everything returns to normal by the next episode, as if these epic confrontations exist in a separate reality layer. The cutaway gags that Family Guy is famous for create their own complex narrative space where characters interact with historical figures, fictional characters, and alternate versions of themselves. These brief sequences often contain more concentrated storytelling than entire episodes of other shows. and they've created a vast library of micro-narratives that exist alongside the main Family Guy timeline. Some cutaway gags reference each other across seasons, creating a meta-narrative about the nature of memory and storytelling within the Family Guy universe. The fact that characters sometimes remember events from cutaway gags in later episodes suggests that these sequences aren't just comedic diversions but actual experiences that exist within the characters' shared reality. The show's treatment of religion and spirituality adds another layer to its lore, with multiple episodes exploring different afterlife concepts. Divine intervention scenarios and questions about the nature of good and evil. Death appears as a recurring character who seems genuinely concerned about maintaining cosmic balance, which implies that the Family Guy universe operates under specific metaphysical rules. Episodes featuring Death reveal that the afterlife in Family Guy functions more like a bureaucracy than a spiritual realm with specific procedures for soul collection and processing. This bureaucratic approach to mortality suggests that existence in the Family Guy universe might be more regulated and systematic than it initially appears, despite the surface-level chaos. The time travel episodes create fascinating paradoxes and timeline complications that the show sometimes acknowledges and sometimes completely ignores. This inconsistent approach to temporal mechanics suggests that time itself might function differently in the Family Guy universe, perhaps operating more like a narrative device than a fixed physical law. Stewie's time travel adventures often involve meeting historical figures who react to him as if talking babies are perfectly normal. This consistency across different time periods implies that the unusual characteristics of Family Guy characters might be universal constants that exist across all timelines rather than modern anomalies. The show's relationship with celebrity culture creates interesting questions about the nature of reality within its universe. Real celebrities often appear as themselves, but they interact with the fictional Griffin family as if they're legitimate public figures. This blending of real and fictional personalities suggests that the Family Guy universe might exist parallel to our own reality rather than completely separate from it. When celebrities appear in Family Guy, they often display exaggerated versions of their public personas, which raises questions about whether these are the actual celebrities or fictional representations based on public perception. The show's treatment of celebrity interactions reveals something interesting about how fictional universes can comment on and interact with real-world culture. The evolution of animation quality throughout Family Guy's run creates its own meta-narrative about the nature of visual reality within the show. Early episodes feature simpler animation styles, while later seasons display increasingly sophisticated visual effects. This progression mirrors technological advancement in our reality, but within the show it might represent something deeper about the nature of visual perception in the Family Guy universe. Episodes that specifically reference the show's animation style or production history create fascinating recursive loops where characters become aware of their fictional nature without fully breaking the fourth wall. These moments suggest that the characters might exist on multiple levels of reality simultaneously, both as fictional constructs and as conscious beings within their own universe. The Griffin family's economic situation provides another layer of complexity because Peter's job history and income level should realistically make their lifestyle impossible. Yet they maintain a suburban home, support multiple vehicles, and finance Stewie's expensive scientific experiments. This economic impossibility suggests that traditional rules of finance and resource management don't apply in the Family Guy universe. Episodes that focus on the family's financial struggles reveal that they do face economic consequences, but these problems get resolved through increasingly absurd means that wouldn't work in real life. This pattern implies that the Griffin family exists within a narrative framework where problems require narrative solutions rather than realistic ones. The show's treatment of education and intelligence creates interesting patterns when you examine how different characters learn and grow. Brian's intellectual development contrasts sharply with Peter's consistent ignorance, despite both characters having access to similar information and experiences. This disparity suggests that intelligence in the Family Guy universe might be more fixed and character-specific than it is in reality. Stewie's advanced knowledge, despite his infant status, raises questions about how learning and development work in this fictional universe. His vocabulary and technical expertise far exceed what any child could realistically possess. Yet other baby characters in the show display normal infant behavior. This inconsistency implies that Stewie's intelligence might be supernatural rather than developmental. The recurring theme of alternate dimensions and parallel universes in Family Guy creates a complex multiverse structure where different versions of familiar characters exist with varying personality traits and life circumstances. These alternate reality episodes suggest that the main Family Guy timeline is just one possible configuration among infinite variations. When characters travel between dimensions, they often encounter versions of themselves that made different life choices or develop different personality traits. This concept implies that character identity in the Family Guy universe might be more fluid and circumstantial than it initially appears. The multiverse episodes also raise questions about free will and determinism within the show's cosmology. The show's approach to historical events creates fascinating anachronisms and alternative history scenarios that suggest the Family Guy universe might exist in a timeline that diverges from our own reality in subtle but important ways. Episodes set in historical periods often include modern elements that shouldn't exist, which implies either time travel influence or an alternate historical development. Family Guy's treatment of technology advancement shows interesting patterns where some innovations appear decades ahead of schedule, while others lag behind realistic development timelines. This inconsistent technological progression suggests that innovation in the Family Guy universe might be driven by different factors than in our reality. The psychological depth of individual characters becomes more apparent when you examine their behavior patterns across multiple seasons. Peter's childlike wonder and destructive impulses suggest possible developmental disorders or psychological trauma that the show explores through comedy rather than serious analysis. This approach reveals character complexity while maintaining entertainment value. Brian's intellectual pretensions and emotional vulnerabilities create a character study about the relationship between intelligence and happiness. His struggles with depression, alcoholism, and unfulfilled artistic ambitions represent serious psychological themes disguised as animated comedy. This layered characterization demonstrates how Family Guy uses humor to explore deeper human experiences. Lois Griffin's role as the family anchor reveals interesting dynamics about gender roles and family stability in dysfunctional households. Her ability to maintain sanity while managing Peter's chaos, Stewie's schemes, and the general dysfunction suggests either extraordinary psychological resilience or possible supernatural intervention. The supporting characters in Family Guy each contribute to a larger tapestry of human behavior and social commentary. Joe Swanson's disability and heroic personality create discussions about capability and determination, while Mayor West's bizarre behavior comments on political leadership and civic responsibility. As we reach the end of this exploration into Family Guy lore, it becomes clear that what appears to be a simple animated sitcom actually contains layers of philosophical complexity, psychological depth, and narrative sophistication that reward careful analysis. The show's ability to maintain comedic entertainment while exploring serious themes demonstrates the power of animation as a storytelling medium. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying awake, thinking about these connections, Family Guy continues evolving and adding new layers to its already complex mythology. Each episode contributes to a larger narrative about family dysfunction, American culture, and the absurd nature of modern existence, wrapped in accessible animated comedy that somehow makes profound observations about the human condition feel effortlessly entertaining and surprisingly profound.